host.
You're a bad host. Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Amos the Boss Hernandez, joining you another week. What did we go? 2 weeks this time? I was gone.
2 weeks. I was on vacation.
Same here. Gone vacation. Knott's Berry Farm, the Wild Animal Park. Everything is so freaking. The San Diego Safari Park. They want like $95 to walk around there and look at animals that aren't really doing anything.
Just wait till you go into Disneyland.
Oh,
no kidding.
yeah. Now I'm not paying $270 to go ride 6 rides and sit. No, you can't even.
6 rides. That's six rides if you're a rookie.
The lines.
Insane.
Anyway, joining me tonight.
Not Steve.
Oh, hold on. Well, I got to jump down there because I wrote.
He forgot.
Joining me tonight, the only fugitive to claim sanctuary at medieval times. It's Robert Wyatt.
I got nothing. I got nothing.
Wedge, bring me a leg of a chicken and a Dr. Pepper.
Oh my God. Have you guys seen the Adam Driver's SNL skit with Saturday Night Live about medieval times?
No.
That
I gotta
is
go look that up.
10 out of 10. Like,
Is it better than when he did like the undercover boss thing? Because I thought that was the best thing he ever did.
it's right up there. It's literally right up there with it. I mean, a black guy comes up to him and he calls him a very racist old term, and it's just it's a beaut. You should, if you haven't seen it.
As he's
Saturday
playing
Night
the
Live, Adam Driver, medieval times.
Okay.
The host. He only pirates the software that costs money. It's Jared Stepp.
That's fair. Listen, I grew up in the days of Napster. Okay. And the
All
parents would just
I'm
get mad at
saying
me.
is if they wanted us to pay for it, then they shouldn't have put it online.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, yeah, it was literally like especially the internet of the early 2000s, late 90s was literally the libertarians' freest market ever. It was so free that once you put it on the internet, it became free instantly.
The funniest thing about that whole situation was like there are people out there that are like, you're stealing from people, and I'm like, bitch, if they didn't go and like force me to like sit through like 17 minutes of their previews on a DVD that I already own, we wouldn't have a problem. But I mean, the second that they're like, you make it so you can't skip past on DVDs, I'm like, screw you. Pirate Bay is looking real good. And the joke of all jokes is I actually buy more music because of the stuff I downloaded. So take that.
Well, now they just have YouTube, and once again, use Brave when you're on YouTube because you get no commercials even when you're logged in. It is
screw you ads.
The best thing possible. And
I just love it that my kids they actually see a commercial, and they're like, "What the fuck is
what
this?"
Is this? What are you watching this on? You watching this? And owner-operator of beefbringers.com. He'll fight any 15-year-old anytime, any place. It's Kenny Terry. Oh, yeah. I was just sitting there. I was just like, how can I word this that makes Kenny fight 15-year-olds? Beefbringers.com. That sounds like a thing. Anyways, Kenny didn't want to come up against this heat of trios shooting Glocks, so he decided not to participate in the Glock match. Who thought of the Glock match anyway? Who was that?
Jared.
I thought it was you two.
I thought it was Kenny that thought of the. Anyways, it was spawned.
Kenny started it.
Either way, it was a fine idea that I didn't think was fine Friday night.
I'm sorry, I forgot about you guys.
It's okay. We just know your priorities.
Volunteering.
Those 15-year-old kids at Lee K.
He had to go fight a 15-year-old in Tennessee. Is your name Marvin?
They made us sand wood for 8 hours in the sun.
Off the benches? Is that pretty much?
Off that fucking bird thing they have by the dump.
Wait,
Can you?
for real?
Could you?
Swear to God, it's for hunting. We have 8 hours before August. And yeah, they made us sand wood for 8 hours in the sun.
And what do you get in exchange for this?
It's what they call dedicated hunters, so I get to hunt all 3 hunts for 3 years straight. But you have to do volunteer hours for it.
Oh, that's not
That's
that bad.
a
That's a good trade.
I mean, it sucks, but that's a good exchange.
What
No,
if you
it's
just
fine,
went to
it's
Home
just like-
Depot and picked up a friend there and said, "Say my name is Kenny Terry," and do whatever they say. Give them
Oh,
Ah,
wow.
the old Civil War
Halfway
draft plan. I
halfway-
like the way you think, good sir.
Halfway through, I was like, if my kid does it, does it still count?
Exactly.
If so, I'll be right back.
Steve actually has scratched out your name and wrote Steve Terry. This is me. My name's Kenny. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I was right next to Slipsaw. I sure wish I would have been over there shooting instead of what I was doing, but
Yeah.
No,
Well-
it's. I mean, it is a good exchange. That's not a bad way to go. I mean, if you like hunting, and did they get a lot of people that come out and do that?
no. So you can buy your hours too, and a lot of people just buy the hours.
Dude, that is exactly like the Civil War draft riots. You can buy your way out of the Civil War, or you can hire a manservant to serve in your place. I'm
What,
okay with this.
How much? What did you have to pay?
It's $40 an hour if you buy the hours or you just work.
Ooh,
$320.
definitely cheaper at Home Depot.
Yeah.
It's doing the good though, giving something to the DWR.
Yeah.
That's what I said. And about 4 hours in, my wife went, "Can't we just buy the hours?"
Why are we doing
Work an
this?
extra day at work. Volunteer to take someone's shift.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we went out there. We shot some absolutely fantastic stages. There were some really good stages yesterday. I don't really think of one that I disliked, the classifier. Even though some of the new ones aren't my favorite things on Earth, I still think they're at least somewhat fun. We even brought out the little suspension bridge and shot off of that, which I thought was pretty fun
good.
and cool. It generally worked out. I mean, the only complaint I would have about the match yesterday is on that swinging bridge, the suspension bridge one. You activated a popper on the far left array, and by the time you got on top of the suspension bridge, the swinger was basically shuffling like he was walking down the airport hallway, just da 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 da. So but besides that, it was
I
a
don't know.
ton of fun.
I thought the RO on the classifier was an asshole. Moving on.
Steve made him put his hands down a quarter of an inch, and Robert's he's too fiery about it.
Robert started hissing. Like he really did. Like Robert, you should send out that because I was videoing you,
Oh yeah.
and you should do a screenshot of when you because you crouched like Gollum for a second, was just like, and Steve just looked at you and shrugged, and he's like, "That's the rules. I don't care."
Yeah. ROs.
Yeah, Steve.
That's the point where in the future I just be like, I'd like a new RO, please.
Please, can you exchange? I can't deal with this personal conflict at the moment
Well,
of you asking
we
my
had,
right hand to go down a quarter of an inch.
We had 5 people who were ROs talk during the make ready, so I wrote all of them up and I sent all the info to McManus to have them disqualified as ROs, including Tom and Robert.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Good.
He-
Well, I hope in your instant report you make sure to write verbatim what I said. Troy can eat a bag of dicks, preferably his own.
And
Make sure you get that.
When you eat
whole
a bag,
thing.
you do one at a time, the whole
Well,
thing.
with Troy, he's from Louisiana, so it's just a giant cock fest.
Gotcha.
You know when you pick up a bag of Cheetos and you just pour it onto your face?
They
It's
just
like that.
flopping,
Just a waterfall. of
just flopping on his face.
Dong.
Preferably if it's a sister, and sister's brother. And...
Yeah, my RO certification's in the same place that Robert's 45 conversion kit is. It's nowhere to be found.
It's at Tom's house.
But talking about Steve's match, Steve shot a really good limited minor
he did
match
good,
and shot
yeah.
90%, tied with Leo on that, and so it was pretty fun to see him out there and shooting, and everyone shooting in the same squad except for Kenny because Kenny hates everybody. It was a lot of good fun. He shot a great match.
It was a lot of fun having everybody all in the same squad. It really was.
Well, that's the first time in a long time.
I can't think of the last time. I think maybe it was the Beretta match just prior to COVID, so that would have been what, 2020 March
Yeah.
or so, or
Yeah, early 2020.
February of 2020, something like that.
Yep. The other thing that was pretty fun is that Robert was very willing to, like, this is going to be a terrible match. I hate this. Why shall I be doing this? Why do I have to shoot a Glock 19 with the Delta Point? This gun weighs nothing. It doesn't even have a hammer. I can decock when I make ready, and you even saw his little thumb trying to go back there.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is, I stick the gun in, rack the slide, or stick the mag in, rack the slide, and no joke, I look at the gun for like 5-10 seconds, and I'm like trying to figure out how to drop the hammer on a Glock 19, and it's not working, and I'm just like, something wrong here.
There's something else I have to do after I put the magazine in charge. There's like another step, and it's just like, no, there's no more steps. So we went out there, we shot it.
I think out of the 6 stages we shot, I tried to do it on 4 of them. It's just,
Very nice.
I mean, I've been shooting a CZ for the past since what, 2007? No, since 2015.
Oh yeah, with your SPO1s, when you got your SPO1s.
So,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. My match wasn't as what I, let's say I was constantly trying to do something else except for being visually aware of what my gun was doing. And even though I only took home 1 mic on a shot that I called, and even though Robert tried to do his best to make sure that it was a hit, I didn't ask him to, but he was trying to do his best. It was a mic. It was some deltas and stuff like that, but it was pretty fun. I mean, I had a great time shooting my my Glock 17 here, so it was a whole lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff that went on, and it was fun seeing everyone shoot. And Robert fell more in love with his Glock 19 as every stage went on.
it's a good gun. I mean, like we said, we were going to shoot stock guns, and it's like the only stock gun I own. And I now officially have more rounds through this Glock 19 after shooting that match than I did before shooting the match. And this is probably the last time you'll ever see this gun going forward. But
we'll lose it in about a week, so
Buy another one.
It's gonna fall in the Great Salt Lake.
yeah, it could happen. No, it was fun. It was fun. It's such a weird gun that I was telling Tommy I mean, when you're out there like zeroing a gun, it feels different. When you're, trying to dry fire, the gun feels different. But as soon as the timer goes off, it's just another gun. I mean, there's characteristic differences. I get it. I know that there's a difference, but Tony Wong, I mean, with his Glock 26, I mean, he kind of like proved that whole thing. It's like, a gun's a gun. By the time the shooting starts, there's nuances. And what is it, Jared? You said it's basically the heavy gun. It's great for party tricks, stuff like that. Yeah.
No,
I mean,
you get the crazy, fancy, expensive guns. They're absolutely wonderful for these stupid drills and patches and all this party tricks, because that's all it is. It's just circus tricks and random stuff that Scott Jadlinski teaches to just make you better for, this will help me when I'm standing and shooting at a bill drill. But on the actual large scale match, it really doesn't change that much, in my opinion.
The whole
the
thing I learned from having the Canic for that couple weeks and dry firing pretty hard with the Canic and going out there and practicing with it is that heavy gun doesn't lift as much. Which, like when you sit there and you think about it, like it doesn't lift as much, and you think that the lifting really matters a whole lot. Like how much the gun pitches up really doesn't matter to a certain extent as long as it returns. And it's one thing that's kind of remarkable with those Glocks is you get a gun that returns fantastically well out of the box that runs the factory recoil springs, and it just literally sends itself back. And me and Robert were shooting his Prodigy and his CZ, and his CZ, you shoot his 50 some odd ounce CZ, and it's very much a very light lift, and you can return it pretty well. But the Prodigy, you would think that shooting the Prodigy after spending all day shooting the Glock 19, that the Prodigy would somehow return better. And what we found, both of us shooting that, is that the Prodigy was lifting pretty high and not returning because of the lightness of the recoil spring compared to what we were used to shooting the previous 200 and some odd rounds.
I mean, yeah, and I think there's no doubt. I mean, the more tuned up a gun is, the more, how do you say this? I think the more tuned up, fancy the gun is, it helps to mask inherent problems. There's a lot of advantage to it. I like it, but I mean, I kind of like actually shooting this Glock 19. I really do.
I think the way I've always described it is you have more of a mechanical advantage with a heavier firearm, but that just means you have to work less. You can still achieve the same results with a Canic or a Glock, but you just have to work slightly harder. And as long as you're used to what you have to work for, I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, this trigger was it's actually literally it's 2.5 pounds or 2.5 times heavier than my CZ triggers are. And I mean, I did notice I can't split the gun as fast with that heavy trigger. I just can't. But that's not that big a deal. Kenny, what do you think?
I mean, I think heavy guns just help you hide some of your fundamental errors.
Yeah.
I think Jared kind of nailed it. Like, they just let you be a little lazy. You got to work a little harder when you're shooting light guns, something like that. But
the one thing that I find weird, and Kenny, maybe you could help me on this. Like, we everyone's talking about tuning the pistols, and when everyone talks about like tuning a pistol or tuning a Glock, like what people seem to want to do is run lighter and lighter recoil springs. So they run lighter and lighter recoil springs, and then like to get the gun, like obviously the point of tuning the gun is to get the gun to return where you want to or to feel a certain way. But it's very little that you hear people running increased weight recoil springs or something 15 pounds or up to get the gun to return the way that they want to. And I don't feel like that ever gets brought up. Like, it's always get like 9, 10, 11, 13 pound stuff.
yeah, so like I would disagree on I don't tune my guns to return better. Like, I agree that all these people, they slow-mo their guns. Look how flat it is. None of that matters. As long as the gun is ready to fire when my finger or my vision's ready to fire, that's all that matters. And a gun can lift a lot and still be ready to fire by the time I'm ready to fire next. I tune my guns that they're to the point that if I am not on my game, they're still easy enough to shoot that I can still manipulate them good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of
As far as like recoil springs, though, I run light recoil springs because if I run a 15-pound recoil spring in my 40 or something, the gun will dip for me. Now, I think a lot of people, they just think that these light recoil springs are the way to go, and so they run them for no reason other than, hey, this guy told me to run it.
Yeah.
They may not have the same grip that I do.
Admittedly, Kenny, that's actually where the Prodigy is right now. But
Yeah.
but you're a starting point. I bought a handful of recoil springs, and then I'll go test that out and find the one that is most close to the way I like the CZ to recoil.
So
yeah, and that's okay, but I think that's why everybody's running light springs, because that's the top end guys run light springs because most of the top end guys have really good grip, so we can run light springs.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of one of the things that made me kind of toss the Canic. Not that it was a bad gun; it was a fantastic gun. So Kenny, what did you start shooting competitively? What was the platform you started shooting competitively first?
Oh, dude,
let's say what you put the most time into. What's
2011 though? Glock. Oh.
Glock. So
for sure, the majority of my shooting has been on the Glock. A couple years, like some weird double action Smith & Wesson my dad had, and then a Glock for a long time, and then 2011's maybe got 8 years on or so.
Well, would you say that your training and your way that you've gone about stuff has been more tuned towards a 40 caliber 2011 or an open gun recently?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So this is so like you have those kind of guns, and the way that they lift, your subconscious way of returning that gun, you basically make the Glock lift and that you return that gun, because then when you add pressure to that recoil spring, it causes you that balance all of a sudden shifts to where you're dipping the muzzle on the gun. And my deal with the Canic is that it was heavy enough that my automatic subconscious return to the gun was causing that gun to nosedive on me when I would have like these crazy kind of like little low shots, because I've been used to having the full power recoil springs in most of the light pistols I have return the gun to the spot that I wanted to, and it was one of those things that you would have to kind of work into to get it to kind of after a while, they basically beat yourself out of it.
That, or you could have gone to a lighter recoil spring, right, and help cure that.
And made it lift even more. Speaking about the light recoil springs, before we talk, Jared and Robert talk about what your other thoughts of the Glock match.
I had fun with it. It was a lot more fun than I kind of went into it. The night before, I was just like, I don't want to do this. This is dumb. Like, Andrew comes in, she's like, what's wrong? It's like, I'm doing this because everybody else is, and I just want to shoot because
Jared, fucking Tom.
No, because that day that gun came.
Yeah.
I was like, I wanted to go shoot that gun. And like, rightly so, because it was cool. This thing's been a 2-year project, and I finally got it back, and so I'm excited. I'm like, I wanted to go shoot it.
For people who can't see what you're talking about, you have your CZ Shadow 2.
I got my Shadow 2 back from Impact Machining, and this gun originally went to ATEI 2 years ago, who said that they could machine an SRO into the slide. They sat on it for a year before they finally said, no, we can't actually do it. And I'm like, okay, we'll just send it back to me. And they're like, that'll be $50 to ship it back to you. Seems kind of bullshit, but it is what it is. So anyway, I got it back, and then I just kind of sat on it. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Matt Hempel. It was a couple people said, go to Impact Machine. So I called them up, and I talked to him. He's like, yeah, we absolutely can do it. And so I sent Scott the gun, and he's like, oh yeah, we can also hard chrome it. And I'm like, hell, I love hard chrome. I'll do that.
Oh.
So, like, might as well. So, like, to do everything, it was like $620. I mean, like, cut the slide, and then hard chrome it. It's like a no-brainer. So I sent it to them, and they had it. And then I got a call from Scott. Oh gosh, it was like January or something like this year. He's like, hey, the guy who was going to hard chrome it, he's a really great hard chromer, but he went to the hospital. It seems like everything's been okay, but I just want to give you a heads up. I'm like, no problem. I'm not really in a hurry for it. Says like, cool, thanks. Calls me like a month later. He's like, he died. I'm like, shit. And he's like, the problem is that he had all the parts. He had sandblasted everything. He was preparing to do all the work. And when he passed away, the ATF, as a part of their duties, I guess they go into FFLs and they'll make sure that everything gets closed down appropriately. But this part, the ATF is like, well, we got to send all this junk back to the original person. And so it took a while, but he finally got it back, and then he sent it off to. He called me on the phone. He's like, I'm really sorry. This is just a crappy situation. I'm like,
you're like, pick better people.
I know. No,
to be fair, the only person alive who's going to hard chrome anything has got to be in their 80s.
So, but I guess I think he hard chromed all of Les Bear's stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so
that supports the 80s comment.
Yeah.
But he's like, what do you want to do? And I just asked him, I was like, if this was your gun and you're in this situation, what would you do? And he says, I would do this CP2 coat on it. There's a guy who can do it. And I'm like, and I was just like, Scott, do whatever you would do to the gun, and I'll be happy. And he's like, cool, I appreciate it. And went off, did that thing. When we were up at Brownie at our camping trip, I get these like weird little bits where like cell phone will come in and out. It's the craziest thing where we're camped. You occasionally you'll have internet, occasionally you won't. But all of a sudden I get this phone call while my son and I are fishing, and it's him, and he's like, I didn't pick it up, and it goes to the voicemail. He's like, hey, I'm shipping that thing out today. And so I'm trying to find internet so I can, or some kind of like reception so I can send a text. Please don't send it. Long story short, I get the gun back. He sends it. I get the gun back. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm just over the moon how good it looks. But
so you have your Prodigy, you have this thing, and your stupid friends are making you take a Glock 19 MOS out. And you got the new 507 comp on the Prodigy.
507 comp on the Prodigy, which also came. Thank you, Brandon Boyd. Jason Bunderson, when I was up there, I got a message. He said, hey, I have one if you want to try and get one. Brandon Boyd, he heard the show, and he sent me a message. And I had ordered one from Gun Mag Warehouse, and so I got that came in, which is really exciting. But yeah, no. So that, I mean, that's cool. But I mean, shout out to Impact Machining, man. Those guys, Scott did such a good job. I mean, like above and beyond. It was such a weird, unfortunate situation, and he did everything he could to make it right. And I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah, that's
because
awesome.
that was just a rough situation. But
well, the gun looks great. It's too bad you got it cut for an SRO when the SRO has now been outclassed and outmatched and is going away. So,
well, the 507 fits, so I'm still good.
Yep.
What's the coating on it? You said it was CP2, but could you describe it for the listeners?
It basically looks like a brushed chrome. That's the. I mean, it's a chrome, but it's a satin finished chrome. I'm actually gonna post a picture up on our Instagram page.
Is it silver or is it like a tan or a FDE?
That's a mood ring.
Really
it depends on
question.
How mad Robert is. It floats between the two.
If you get it in different lights, it has more of a brown color to it. But when you take it outside, it's very it kind of has a silvery, kind of a satin silver color to it.
Because that was the thing. Because in a bunch of the photos, I've kind of been confused because it's like in some of the photos it looks like it's silver.
It has a silvery brown color.
Looks like it's that FDE, but I know it's like black nitride, but it's silver, right?
Yeah. But what it definitely
it's like a DLC coating.
It's Gun Magazine beautiful is what it is, and so you can see some of the pictures on there. I mean, it's very well done. It's too bad that Robert's now shooting a Glock 34. I mean, he's got to sell. He's got to sell everything else. I mean, like when you bring up Robert, maybe you should go buy a Glock 34, and he says, "Well, I won't do anything till after Utah State." And you're like, "Oh, the mind virus has taken its toll. It's starting to worm its way in."
Well, that was the thing. Shooting the match with you guys, like I was determined. Like I have other Glocks, and I could have borrowed Lexus. He has a Glock 34 with a dot on it. But I was like, we're gonna shoot a stock gun match, and I'm like, this is the stockest gun I own, and I'm gonna go shoot it because why not? And it has a 5.5 pound trigger on it. But it's a Glock 19. Glock 19s are great guns. They really are.
Yep.
I mean, I think they're probably one of the best guns on the market for a first time buyer. And so went out, shot it. The gun, I've always shot a Glock 19 well. And I had fun. I mean, honestly, I had fun because you guys were on the squad. That's really why it was fun. But we had who was it? Alex came out
shooting a Glock 19 that he had cut for a Steiner MPS Gen 4 that looked absolutely fantastic. We had Colby. We had we have Josh. We had like everyone was showing up shooting Glocks. We had a couple people shooting a CZ and some. We had like Ed and stuff like that shooting like 40s. Like, get out of here with your limited trash. But anyways,
I laughed. Gino came up to me and was like, "Why? What is going on? Why are you all shooting Glocks?" He's like, "I know you change your gun all the time, but what? Why are you guys? Why is Robert shooting a Glock?" I'm like, "Well, there was an argument, and now we're here.
Now we're doing this."
So it was fun.
It was fun. It really was a fun day. And this the silliest thing, but I mean, when we shoot like slips and stuff like that, we're always like, I'm going to take my competition gun. This is the gun that I'm going to compete with. And it's always the gun that you take. But you have a safe full of other guns. And you're like, why not go shoot those other ones? Because I paid $20. By gosh, I'm going to shoot the competition gun. Mm-hmm. But when you get on a fun squad like we had yesterday, I mean, like with Andy and Colby and Jared and you and Steve and stuff, like the day's fun, and it makes it so like, hey, let's shoot this goofy Glock 19 that's kind of not super optimal for the game. It was just fun. Yeah, it was a fun day.
Speaking of, while we're still on the topics of Glocks, a couple weeks ago before I went down to California, I went up there and zeroed some guns and checked the zeros on 2 Glock 17 Gen 5 and a Glock 34. I put it up on my Instagram, but noticed the groups were mighty wide. I mean, like 3 inches or so. And so I was running an 11 pound and I think a 13 pound in the Glock 17. and decided, like, I wonder if the only thing that's different from when they used to group smaller to how they group now was the changing in the spring rate. And so I literally took 3 springs for the 17, a 11, a 13, and the factory 17, and then put an 11 and a factory Gen 3 guide rod in the 34. And the 34 decided that it would shoot 3 rounds in literally less than half an inch, and then 2 rounds slightly below that, so it shot basically an 1.25 inch group at 15 yards, and then so 3-inch reduction in size almost, and then on the Glock 17, 2.5, 3.5 inch groups down to about a 1 3/4 inch groups from a rest. And you think about it, and I was talking to Blake Corris, our resident gunsmith. I was thinking about, like, there's the issue of lock time on these semi-automatic pistols, because the only thing that keeps a semi-automatic pistol is the locking lug and the recoil spring. When you lighten the recoil spring, it has a potential to have an early unlocking effect. On a hammered fired gun, the hammer's already on the back of the slide, keeping that slide in battery, so you can play around with recoil springs and get to tune it with hammer springs. But on some of these guns, it can have a detrimental effect to the accuracy. Now, sometimes you can lose 1.5 inches in accuracy for a better feel in the gun, but it's just kind of one of those things that I noticed that Glock is, yeah, what, you don't, Robert's making a face.
Sorry, I just had all this, like, this Michael Scott, that's what she said moment.
Yeah. Better feel. Maybe
Better mouth feel.
Yeah. I'll lose 1 inch for a better looking face. So anyways, so yeah, it was pretty neat to sit there and see. And honestly, while we were sitting there shooting and having that kind of feel conversation about the gun returning, it's like, for me, at least for a while, we'll be running a stock spring in the gun, maybe a tungsten guide rod with a 17 or 19 pound recoil spring in the gun to make sure I'm getting everything out of the Glock that I possibly can. So food for thought. Try it out yourselves.
Tom,
Yes.
you running a factory striker spring in both those guns?
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to see the test run like a 3-pound striker spring with an 11-pound recoil spring and see if the accuracy will stay the same as factory on factory.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
do you think it would be, Kenny?
Well, so I run a 2-pound striker spring with a 10-pound recoil spring, and my guns shoot 1.5 inch groups.
Yeah. So as
But like I was telling you in the other chat, that I think if you're running a full house striker spring with a light recoil spring, you can start to pull that gun out of battery.
yeah.
Right.
And like I said, affect the unlock time, but I think if you lower the striker spring weight as well, it won't pull it out of battery as much.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
because
but,
you're
yeah, and the same things with 2011s. Like when you change a recoil spring, the hammer spring affects everything too. Like these springs play together. You can't change one without thinking of the other.
Yeah. And there's the variety of spring weight you can put in like a mainspring on a 2011 or a 1911. I mean, it is crazy. I mean, you can get variances of 8 pounds that you can sit there, go on Wolf, and get like a super heavy or a super light, and you might be able to play with what? Possibly within 2 pounds, a 2-pound striker spring to a 4-pound, maybe extra power you might be dealing with. So it is pretty interesting what you can mess with. But yeah, you can take these guns, you can F the guns up to shoot out a battery, and just because somebody else is running an 11-pound recoil spring might not be the best option for you to run.
Yeah.
Without some considerations.
Well, it's like Robert and I talked about. Everybody changes hammer springs on 2011s just for the trigger weight, but it affects how the gun recoils. Your firing pin style affects how the gun recoils. All that affects the gun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Anybody have anything else? No.
I just want to say that Steve did really well. He beat you guys on a handful of stages.
Yes, he did. He did.
I was shooting a Glock 19.
But you had a red dot, so I mean.
True.
So it kind of evens out.
Yeah, it was.
No, Steve shot a really good match. He should be proud of himself.
It was a close race.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you're just like, it's one of those matches that you shoot and you're just like, damn, I needed to save that for like a state match. You know, it's like when you have those kind of tier matches with it. Like he, for not practicing it much, he was pretty sharp.
All right, so hold up. Who won out of the Glock match?
Well, out of us,
course.
Jared.
Yeah, out of you guys.
Jared won. He started getting the index giveth and the index taketh away near the end of the match. I saw my perfect example of Jared step shooting was, we're in the classifier. You have to you have to retreat, so you're drawing and shooting a target to the left, target to the right, and a target to the center. And I believe, Jared, you shot at left, center, right, correct?
From the front or from the rear?
From the front.
From the front, yeah.
Okay.
From the front, I did left, center, right.
Jared draws. He gets 2 shots by the time his hand gets on the gun. So, like, basically splits those. And then goes to, like, he's going to, like, transition. And then, like, he gets to the transition. And then he has to bring the gun up. Because he does not have the gun up yet before he's made the shots to the center of the target. So it was kind of like one of those things where, like, oh, there you go.
Posh.
And the
sights.
It's a 2-yard target.
Well, the 2-yard target was quick. It was just when you're transferring over the other one, you're still bringing the gun up. It was one of those very quick matches. Robert beat me. I think me and Robert with what, a quarter of a percentage or something like that, half a percentage point.
I think it was like 4 or 5 points. It was very, very close.
You two and Josh were like right on top of each other. Smithers barely got you guys.
Oh, good for him. That's awesome.
That is great to hear. But we all looked better because we were all running our Dominate Defense gear. Head on over to Dominate Defense. Get yourself a fantastic Mach 1 speed belt. The carry belts can also be found. The new carry belts can be found on Tier 1 Concealment's website. You can check them out. Use promo code PARA10. Save 10% off your order. It is a fantastic product. I was also rocking my Precision Holster pouches and my Precision Holster Fast Holster, PHAST. Check those out. You can use the same promo code, save 10% off Precision Holsters. And you can get a Rune Tactical Guide Rod, W74 Guide Rod, and a Rune Tactical Extra Follower, which I ran in the Arredondo base plates. I got 24 rounds in the gun, and I had no issues whatsoever. I would highly advise that you start with that one. That's the way it is, because it's definitely an administrative load to get that gun seated in there and ready to go. But it worked fantastic.
Yeah,
so,
my base pads, if I remember right, came from like Alibaba or something like that, like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm like, $12 for base pads and springs. What can you lose?
Robert went from the economical platform, and he's just like, I'm going to go on the exact opposite. Give me Henning base pads. Get me a PVD finish. Give me an SRO. Give me 6 of these things.
$600 to get a new finish? That's great. That's the cost of a new Glock.
Well, I would keep this. I would shoot somebody and throw this away.
That's fair.
Robert's new carry gun is Glock 19 with the Delta point. Telegram, ask us questions. We'll try to answer them.
Let's see, from Dirk Hopkins. Any idea on the vote yet? I have no idea. I have no idea when that thing's gonna end. For that USPSA president thing.
The election.
Yeah.
Right.
I was hoping that it was going to be like the vote on who's going to replace Troy McAnus, but apparently that's not a vote we're taking.
We don't get that vote for a long time.
When everyone's great, because we could have like voted for a rock.
All right, the country or a rock?
The country or the person?
Either way, it's going to be an advantage. I mean, if we just got like a simple rock and then stuck it on the rule book and said no more changes, that would be as effective as DNROI.
Voting goes through July 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Keep those hands lower than the belt, Robert.
Quarter inch.
Quarter inch, boy.
You son of a bitch.
Tell you what, like, oh, yeah, it's going to make a big difference.
You do have a very ambiguous kind of high right hand.
Well, your primary hand is good, but your support hand.
My right hand is sitting right on top of those magazines. It ain't going nowhere.
It's like
on top of the magazine.
No, it's like indexed right there. So there's the belt line right there, and like my hand's sitting freaking right there. If I go like this, yeah, maybe it's
Robert just self-incriminated himself right there. It's literally like, and I bet you she said before you killed her that she hates you, and then the guy goes, "That's not what she said." Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't kill her. I'm sorry, I don't know what she said. I wasn't there.
Somebody was doing, I don't know who it was. Somebody was doing some range lawyering because somebody came up to Andy and was like, "Your gun is too low. You need to raise it because the butt of your, I don't know, but the butt of his pistol was not equal to his belt line, so it was too low. It was like, this much too low,
half inch.
and so that's why he was dinking over in the safe area trying to change his holster height. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
It's level. It's the slips and match is fine. That's why you guys carry like drugs in your back pocket, right? So you can go, turn around, sir. Let me frisk you, and then you're like, what do you have right here? Busted.
Yeah, if your name's not Hunter Biden, having drugs on you is illegal.
You see that thing is the white with his nose.
The video that's circulating on Twitter of like Hunter Biden and the family all up on the White House thing or whatever, and Hunter like
wiping his nose, checking his nose. What's that cocaine song they always have playing in the background? Oh, that's fun.
What are your thoughts on the judge striking down the frame and receiver rule from the ATF?
Explain, Robert.
Explain. So the ATF came out with a rule a while ago talking about they basically redefined the frame and receiver so that functionally like 80% were now guns.
80, yeah, and they want to make the upper receivers also
and you had to serialize the upper receiver and serialize all these parts. And I think it was in the Fifth Circuit or something like that, judge basically just threw it out saying you don't have the power to do this, and better luck next time. And I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'm just pulling it. Yep.
I'm generally of the opinion that everybody in the country should have a gun. Yeah, I'm down with that.
Yeah, that would be the well, nowadays that'd be like the motto.
I'm kind of that Lord of War comment. Like 11 billion people have guns. How do we get the rest of them? That thing?
Yeah, how do we get the rest? It's called Palmetto State Armory.
Jared
They're working on that.
I don't like this idea at all.
Yeah, look, I've met many people.
Look,
hell, I'll throw my mom into this category. She shouldn't have a fucking gun.
Well, there's
crazy Filipino women do not need firearms.
Well, should a person who is accused of domestic violence, should they lose their right to firearms?
I don't care about that.
that's actually that's the big one that's coming up here soon.
Yeah.
I mean, in Utah, in the United States, you're considered innocent until proven guilty, and so you shouldn't lose your rights to firearms.
Yeah, but the problem is the only crime, like, I'm not even joking, that Utah will always prosecute and will always go the whole way with is domestic violence crimes, DVs. I have had so many cases that just get thrown out when you have felons with guns, with drugs, selling guns, like selling drugs, all the things, stolen cars, stolen guns, shooting them at people, all that crap. I've had cases get thrown out, and it's not even like we did something bad. It's not like the prosecution did something bad. It's literally, we get an email from the district attorney's office that says, in the interest of justice, we will not be prosecuting. We will not be furthering charges in this case. And it's because they don't have time for it.
That's the dirty secret of a lot of the legal cases is if they tried to prosecute. That's like that we always talk about, why don't you go after like everybody that fails a 4473, why don't you go after this? Because there's not enough lawyers to do all that work.
They can't.
It's just you don't have the resources to deal with all that stuff. And it's a terrible thing, but it is absolutely true.
The only cases that will always go through all the way to the end where they will go to a judge and wait and like, okay, well, if the victim doesn't show up, then it gets tossed. But it'll go all the way to the judge and jury, and then the victim doesn't show, then they toss it and say, sorry, we can't do anything. Our DVs. Wow. Because the state is terrified. And there's so many cases all over the U.S. of where, what was it? That Instagram lady who was like, she's gone to the cops like 37 times and they didn't do anything. Yeah. So there's all these cases, and everyone's terrified about that. And so they will push DV cases all the way to the absolute end, even though a bunch of the DV cases are absolutely stupid.
You're right.
But because of liability, they're terrified of them. And now they keep on actually introducing new things that we have to do for DVs. It used to be domestic violence cases were fairly straightforward. You'd show up. If there was a crime committed against their what's called a co-inhabitant, that would be a domestic violence crime. Domestic violence isn't a noun in the cop world, it's an adjective. So it's always assault is the crime with a domestic violence additive.
Yeah.
So you can't just do domestic violence. That doesn't exist. It has to be a crime like assault or criminal mischief or whatever, with domestic violence as the adjective on there. But the problem is now they keep on adding these things like, oh, now we have to do this form, now this form, now this form, now this form, now this form. So now if we go on a basic DV, we have to fill out like 4 or 5 state mandated forms, and it's just absurd, and it's all about liability. That's all it is. That's all anybody cares about anymore.
Jeez. There was an interesting topic, an interesting conversation that happened in the PARAcast chat about calibration. How would you fix calibration, like steel calibration? Kenny?
I don't know. I mean, this conversation's been had hundreds of times. Is there an actual fix to it? I mean, I know people say, well, if you hit it in the calibration zone, it doesn't fall. It's automatic reshoot. I don't know. I mean, just knock the fucking thing down. That tends to fix it.
I had a thought that we talked about a little. I was kind of curious your thoughts on it. But like, what if person shoots it, doesn't go down. If there's a visible hit in the calibration zone, fix the popper, collect 8 rounds from the shooter's magazine, and then it becomes a mandatory reshoot. And then they at some point later they actually go to chrono and verify that they're shooting power factor ammo.
And if they're not?
That's a great question. If they're not,
kill them.
If they're shooting minor, then that
solves itself,
yeah,
right?
That's like they're either shooting for fun, or like if they're shooting major, do we bump them down to minor? Or if they've already declared what they are and gone through, and then we prove it otherwise, that's considered unsportsmanlike conduct, so that would be a match DQ. I haven't thought to the punishment for failing the chrono at that point, but from the sense of a calibration, I kind of think that would work. I mean, if there's a visible hit, because you have to have a visible hit to even have the call in the first place. But if it's in the calibration zone, if it's below the calibration zone, shit, I didn't think of this.
So
below the calibration
what would we
zone.
say? Like
If it's
the
below
one
the calibration zone, it's just a miss then? That's what I'm saying.
That's a great question, Kenny.
I mean,
that's a great question.
well,
I
the
didn't
one
think
thing
that
the one
far.
thing you don't
ever
want to
since
have happen
Bogle
is
lost-
getting shot again. Right? Like that's the one thing that's kind of always kind of screwed up, is just shooting the thing that might be on the edge of going over, that didn't get over, shooting it again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kenny, what were you saying?
Well, so ever since Vogel lost production nationals years back, this has been a topic over and over. Then it happened to JJ, and it's been over. I mean, people bring up so many things. Only shoot mini poppers, or I don't know if there is a cure that doesn't also have repercussions to the quote unquote cure.
Yeah. I don't know. The topic came up, and I was like, that's actually an interesting question. I don't know the solution.
I mean, I've center punch poppers that didn't go down with major guns, and it sucks. Either you have to make that decision, bang it again, or hope that it stands.
I lost first place at EMG Nationals because of a popper fuck.
Yeah.
I was mad.
Understandably so.
I
It
hate
happened,
you,
but-
Josh Wakamatsu.
I don't know how to compare to it. I mean, the best I've heard is go to minis, because most minis fall pretty easy.
Well, all of our forward falling stuff now are triggered so darn well. I mean, they go down.
Unless they're reset wrong, right? And then there's the problem, is there's always human error in these.
Yeah, but Farty did a good job in trying to take as much human factor. By the way, whoever came up with that plate system for holding the swinger and the bobber up, that was awesome.
Yeah, we'll have to get a picture of that
Yeah.
and post it, because it's just
Have
like,
you seen that, Kenny? They got
It's
a
really
new
cool. There's a so they
doohickey.
have a plate, and then there's a
instead of
hinged
taking a
square tube
stick with a cord tied
that's
to it.
attached to it, and then you can adjust the plate, and with a bolt, and then the bottom of it sits on the activator, like on the hammer
A
of the
shelf.
swinger or the bobber,
Yeah.
and then basically the cord just pulls that out, and it just drops straight down in the same direction. It kind of pretty much idiot proofs setting an activator.
Yeah,
And it
because
works really, really well.
it gives you a shelf, a very stable shelf that the shelf removes, that sits on the counterweight of the swinger. I mean, and so it becomes there's no drag. Like if you sit there and you have a stick, or putting it up wrong, or like
It's
when
consistent for every shooter.
when everyone's playing, you got to put the stick on the very edge of this over here, because if you put it on the stem, it'll completely screw up. So no, it's very well
Yeah,
done.
honestly, Kenny, I thought you had done it, so it turned out really, really well. I liked it.
It just showed up at Slipsy yesterday. No one had ever seen it before. No one knows where it came from, but we assume it's from God. So thank you.
I would imagine just on
Thank
the
you,
popper
Jesus.
calibration thing, you could do a visual thing as far as the calibration zone. All you would need is, because poppers are mostly uniform as far as you could do it, but you could just like a rule book change on what the actual calibration zone, and then reinforce that line through some sort of spray paint target of what is the calibration zone and north above it. I mean, it gets kind of hard with steel, because then you hit that line like half on, half above, and if it's in the calibration zone or not. But I'd say you just be more generous of what you would consider the calibration zone. If there's a hit in that, then you basically could get a reshoot.
Sean Edmonds asked the question as to, why does steel have to fall? I mean, for activators, obviously for activators.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Does the steel have to fall? Does that have to be a thing? Is there some reason that we require steel to fall?
I mean, I think the only reasoning in the past that was just to prove that it was a sufficient hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't fall, say we're scoring it doesn't have to fall, and you go through scoring stuff and there's only a partial hit, then is that a miss then?
No, because it's a hit.
No, because it's still a hit.
Yeah, like
Well,
I'm just saying what I'm asking, because it wouldn't, if you got a quarter of a bullet on a popper, it's not gonna fall.
Yeah, because
Right.
then then you'd have to treat it like paper in
That's
terms of.
That's what I'm getting
Oh.
at. Is I think they say it has to fall because there is no perf. So falling is just
yeah.
guaranteed.
All
it's
I'm
just-
saying is I've bullied my way into saying it's a hit multiple times out at the farm when I'm shooting 12, 13 splits.
12,
and
13
I'm like, no, that
power
was a hit.
factor ammo.
That was a hit, and people are
checks
like,
out caught bowling
"Are you
people.
sure?"
yeah, she checks out abuse of the law.
They weren't minorities. It was fine.
But I would say that you would have to have the definitive line that would with no ambiguity. So like you just say it's a hit. Like if it greases it, marks it. If there's a chip in the paint where the bullet might be, you might have to just sit there and say it hit, because
Well,
other than that, you get into a subjective. Well, that's not enough, or it is enough. Or if you hit it over here, or you put 0.6 more of a bullet on it, then it's hit. And all we're talking about is we're not talking about pursuing or giving the person a score. We're talking about giving the person a reshoot, which means they have equal opportunity to F it up again or F something up else again. And I don't think anyone's as good enough to sit there and think like the first quarter of the stage has gone so bad that they're going to put an edge hit on a popper and get their way out of it. I think as long as the only consequence is a reshoot, you're not really hurting the competitive equity.
I think Barry Steel Open has a number of targets where they're just like standard steel targets where you have to hit them once or twice. And I think their rule set is if there has to be 2 marks on the target. And that's at RO discretion if I remember correctly. But I do like those matches though. The Barry's scramble style where it's just you're running through, shooting steel, either whether it's 1 or 2 hits on each. That'd be interesting to look at their rule book and see what they have to say about that.
That would be an interesting calibration call, like if you have to show 2 marks on the steel before you could call for, like, not a calibration call, but call for a reshoot on a popper. Like you had to shoot it twice. that would change a lot of.
Well, they didn't do it on poppers.
No, but I'm just thinking about on poppers. Imagine that if you sat there and you shot it, and in order to
That's
get
a
a
terrible
caliber,
idea.
you would have to shoot it twice. Right?
I'm just curious, out of all the mistakes in the rule book, is this the biggest one to always? I mean, it seems like it's always at the forefront of the conversation wanting to be changed. Have you guys been? I mean, I've had 3 times in 19 years I've been screwed on it. I mean, does that happen that frequently?
Once.
People?
I think
I
once I've been burned on it.
I don't
Yeah,
think
I
I've
have once.
ever been burned on it.
Yeah. I think
However,
it just like
the
it happens to
tie down
some
rule,
top-end
tie down
shooters.
rule absolutely needs to be solved.
Well, I think
It
it's
is-
just
Kenny, that
when
is a
it
good
does happen, it's a very visible mistake, especially in like JJ's situation, or for like what I was talking about. In my situation at EMG, I shot the popper, and it was kind of what you guys were talking about. It hit the calibration, but it edged the calibration, so it was right there on the edge. And so they didn't give it to me, and they didn't give me a reshoot. They just gave me this miss. And that I think is the problem with the poppers in general, is just they're very visible, because when it does screw somebody, and then it just so happens, oh, I lost that match by less than a second, and that penalty was 4 seconds.
More
Yeah, but
So it's like,
I've also seen way more matches lost by a bullshit call on an RO than poppers ever had.
somebody fat fingering a Charlie instead of an Alpha. Somebody like more people haven't shot perfect doubles and been given mics than have been screwed over by poppers.
That's what I'm saying. Like it seems like when it happens, it's such a big argument, but it's so rare that it actually happens. There's way more things that cause people to lose matches than that. Like it feels, yeah, it sucks for you. It sucks for JJ. It sucks for Vogel.
Yep.
It happens.
But that's just the game.
And having
That's
bad
just
leadership
part of
in USPSA
competing,
sucks
man.
for everybody.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
all right, is that it? We're done. What are we doing?
We have a couple more, unless you want to be done.
Calm down, Tommy.
Send them.
What optics were you guys using on your Glocks? What you were using? Lights? Were you using AIWB, IWB holsters, or OWB race holsters?
OWB fast holster from Precision Holster, shooting my Glock 17 with an RMR 6.5. I think it's an RM07. It's a fun little. It's a great little. This is, if I had one carry optics gun to have for the rest of my life, it'd be this little setup right here. It's a fantastic setup. It's been reliable. It's been very accurate, and I like it. No light. I prefer the way the gun returns without the light.
Somebody needs to save that clip and play it to Tom in 2 weeks when he's gonna go buy some stupid ass gun from Europe.
I'll be shooting this in 2 weeks. Don't worry.
Glock 19 Delta Point Pro. It's the 2.5 MOA. The reason I used that was because I didn't have time to pull the 6 MOA off and re-zero it. I had a CompTac holster that was lying around. I attached it to a Boss hanger, and then I had some. And the reason I used that was because it was already on a belt that happened to have mag pouches from Safariland that I had used when I was shooting limited forever ago. I put as little effort into this as possible.
I used my duty rig, so I had a Safariland ALS with the retention active, and then I had actually it was a Dominant Defense multicam belt that he made for me a long time ago that I've used as my swap belt for forever, and S-Tech mag pouches that are great, ESSTAC, they're fantastic for duty. And then I had just a stock Glock with a Surefire X300 on it and a RM06 Trigicon, a 325.
Yeah, 325 or is it 3.5? Either way.
Pretty sure it's a 325. But yeah.
Let's see. Robert, you shoot a pretty heavy gun all the time. How different was shooting a Glock yesterday? When I was shooting the stages, it was functionally imperceptible. I talked to Tommy about this, and that is the strangest thing to admit, but it just wasn't. I mean, I just shot the stages. I pulled a gun out and I shot the stages, and it could have been a CZ, it could have been a Prodigy, it could have been a Glock. I just shot the stages.
I would think that the things that affect people most is the grip feel, like the way the grip feels around the handle and how much hand they can get on the gun. Of course, having an accurate and reliable handgun, and then trigger.
If I had more, so Glock 19, it doesn't have as much of a grip length
Yeah.
So if I had more grip, that certainly would have helped.
Well, the other part too is like if you stick a Timney in that thing, and all of a sudden you're like, then you're splitting with it as well, or even like the Glock Performance trigger, which is a little bit easier to manipulate.
Oh, for sure. But that was the thing. Like under the pressure of shooting a stage and time, that 5.5 pound trigger doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't. I mean, it's like it exists. I know that it exists. There's no doubt that I can split my CZs faster. I know that. But I can't split them so much faster that it's like, oh, this is just ineffective and it's totally unusable. The gun works. It's an effective gun. It works exceptionally well. And under the time pressure, doing all that stuff, pull the gun out as soon as I acquire a dot. I'm just shooting, and I just shot the stages.
Yeah.
So
well, it's more that like the CZ is just more forgiving, right? When you make a bad trigger press,
exactly,
it's better to make the bad trigger press. When you have a bad grip, the gun weighs more, a little easier to grip. It's so you can fight through a bad grip.
Yeah.
Versus the Glock 19, you gotta have a proper grip. You gotta work the trigger properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're on with the Glock 19, you're probably gonna shoot the same scores with your CZ, right?
Yeah.
It's just the CZ is more forgiving for mistakes.
Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%. I am not trying to say that. I'm not trying to say that a heavy gun, that the CZ is just like, throw it in the trash. It doesn't matter. I know it does. I know that it plays a role in it. But it was very interesting to note that I didn't feel as like outgunned with the 19 as I thought I would going into it. I was like, oh, this is a very capable gun, and I still have enough fundamentals that I can do these things correctly. But yeah, what you're saying, I mean, the CZ does help when you mess things up.
Well, that's the one thing too, is like you can have, I'd say one thing that the CZs and the heavier guns kind of have a benefit to, it's like you can have an equal grip or do whatever, but when you have to shoot around walls and other obstacles that compromise your upper body in the grip, if it's a tight shot, like the heavier gun just returns a whole lot better when you do not have maximum control over the handgun, and because you can set up your grip to return the gun perfectly well, fine, but then when they compromise that, the heavier gun does seem to return slightly better to where it's going. And it's just a compromised grip thing, but it's a compromised grip thing that's planned into the stage.
Yeah.
So
no, and like I said, I'm not trying to say that nobody needs a heavy gun or anything like that. It was a very fun observation shooting the match that I wasn't as held back as I thought I would be going into it. It was really quite interesting.
I think the more experience you get and the higher your ability as a shooter is, the less you are affected by changing firearms.
I would agree with that. That's probably
if we
fair
give
statement.
Kenny his 2011 and he shoots a stage, and we give Kenny his Glock and he shoots the stage, I would imagine they're probably going to be very, very similar in times, et cetera, et cetera. It's just what everybody's been saying. The heavier guns have a mechanical advantage, which makes the job of the shooter easier.
Yeah. Let's see. Last question. I just lost it. Sorry. How do you dress in the summer for matches to maximize your comfort? You buy that really cool shirt from Jared from Outdoor Research.
Yeah.
That thing was awesome. Really quite like that. Like the air just goes through. You stay cool the whole day. Those summer shirts are nice. Sun hoodies.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. First experience with one. That was pretty darn legit. Having said that, I got home after the match, and like, I thought I drank a lot of water. I thought I was staying up on it. About an hour after, I'm getting like the muscle shakes and spasms, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good.
Dude, you eat 6 pieces of bacon, you have 7 rock stars, and then you're back. You're hydrated, salted, ready to go.
I went downstairs and I grabbed one of my Pedialytes, and I just drank the entire bottle, and I felt a lot better about an hour later. But I thought I was staying up on it, but it was a warm day yesterday.
I've been outside almost every day for my adult life, and 5 days a week working outside. And honestly, like some zinc sunscreen, a cool cotton shirt, and some shorts, and a hat, some sunshades, I'm a pretty happy camper. Some of the sun shirts are pretty great. I always have I would always like the air just to kind of hit me and to go through it, but they have a lot of these moisture wicking shirts like Hurley. If you go to Costco, Hurley will have some of these shorts and these shirts that you can get. And as you get a little bit of water on them, if you need to keep cool, they actually don't stick to you that well, and they'll provide a cooling effect. And then there's always some of like those core concept stuff that will have like some of these ice packs or stuff underneath you that I know that a lot of the UPS drivers in hotter environments went to. Is these you know that you have those heating shirts for the like the Milwaukee jackets. A lot of them have these cooler undershirts that have these chargeable cool things
Coolers
that will
in it,
stick on your-
really?
yeah. I mean that's for when you are like that's not when it's Robert Wyatt temperature sensitive. That's for when men need to be cooled down. Not at 76 degrees. It's cold out. I got 7 shirts on. It's cold.
It was cold in the morning, then it got hot.
Yeah,
That's
the
all of
important
them.
thing is just hydrate.
Yeah.
Drink the night before.
Yep.
Drink and clarify. Drink water the night
Oh,
before.
water.
Oh,
Not-
Water. That's what Kenny's been doing wrong.
Not just loads of natty ice.
Dude,
well,
I
that's
thought,
still
like
water.
Dos
Ask
Equis, I
Kenny,
was like,
or
yeah.
ask Koski.
Yeah, I thought you were just telling me to drink a dozen Dos Equis the night before.
Oh yeah, and get
Do
those
it.
Modelo's too in you while you gotta get a chance, you know. Anyways, thanks for downloading, thanks for listening, thanks for subscribing, thanks for checking us out on YouTube. Search PARAcast Firearms Podcast, and you might be able to pull that up. You can check out the stuff on Instagram too. Just search PARAcast. And if you're wondering about this, asking questions on Telegram, just download the Telegram app. It's a personal messaging app. You get nothing in it. You get nothing in your feed that you don't personally subscribe to. So you can just search Paracast and pop it up, and then you can have conversations with a lot of the great people that are on there and having a good time. Even people that may have disappeared from social media. Well, the presence of the shooting world, you might find in like Mr. E. Minlin. So other great people like that, Sean Edmonds. We have a lot of people that are fantastic in there. So thank you for downloading, listening, and subscribing. Thanks for all that. For Robert Wyatt, Jared Stepp, and Kenny Terry, I'm Tom Nelson, bidding you peace, love, and souls. We depart into the open waters of the Sea of Life on a little tugboat we like to call the Paracast.
Good night, everybody.
Toot toot.
Doot doot.
Doot. All right, that's great. All right, thanks.
Good.
Stop.
And stops.
Pause.
All right, everybody
Done.
up.